Today, I'm going to be showing you a few clips from the animal kingdom to better explain and teach you where our freeze response originates from and why. Freeze response is a very confusing, disturbing experience that we have as humans. It can happen anywhere when you're overwhelmed. It can happen when you're threatened. It can happen when you're stressed out, scared, didn't get a lot of sleep. What it is the body tensing up against the desire to move and express. Did you ever sit at a table with people and you really wanted to say what was on your mind and you literally couldn't find the words? It's like the words escaped and you're just sitting there frozen, unable to speak. This is the freeze response turning on in moments where you don't actually need it to. And that's kind of the issue with freeze, is when we need it, it is super useful and helpful. When we don't, it gets in the way of a lot of things. Procrastination, feeling lazy, unmotivated, chronic fatigue and exhaustion, all of these things fall under the freeze response. One, let's say, subcategory of freeze is collapse. This is where the body, unlike freeze, which is very rigid, becomes very languid and soft and lifeless. This is what depression feels like. This is when you're walking around feeling really heavy and bogged down. This is what collapses. Now, why do we collapse? Why do we freeze? Why do these bodies do this? I'm going to explain it, and I'm going to show you a couple images and videos to help you better understand. Freeze response is what I like to call the body's third response, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. When we have a trauma or stress response, the body has an automatic reaction, a reflexive expression against or in response to a potential or actual threat. So the simple way to put that, something stimulates the body to go into a stress or trauma response. And there are four major ones. There is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fight and flight is what the body prefers to do when there is an overwhelm or a potential threat. Why? Because it's one way to ensure survival. If you can fight off a threat or run away from a threat, you're probably going to be fine. However, there are times when we enter or experience inescapable threat or inescapable attack. This is when someone is hurting us or something is happening in our environment beyond our control. We can't fight it off. We can't run from it. Being trapped in a building that's burning, being pinned against a wall by a person, even being in a car crash when the collision takes place and you can't stop it. These are all experiences where we're going to go into freeze because we can't fight or flight. Why do we go into freeze? There's a few reasons. One reason is the origin of freeze, the animal origin, which I'll show you in a moment, is to create disinterest for the predator. When someone is attacking you or chasing you or hurting you and you shut down and seem lifeless, their body starts to relax, which allows you to potentially get away when they're not noticing or looking. That's one reason. Another reason that the body freezes is to create a rigid boundary to protect your internal organs. So if I am in a head-on collision, which I was many years ago, and I saw the car coming at my car, my whole body froze and tightened up in expectation and bracing against the threat. That's my body's attempt at trying to create a barrier to protect my lungs, my stomach, my internal organs, to keep me from being punctured or hurt. So rigidity is one way the body tries to protect itself and brace against an impact. The final piece about freeze that I find very interesting, and this is more a spiritual philosophy, is that it's a kind mechanism from nature to anesthetize you. When you're in a freeze or collapse, you often can't feel very much. You'll start to go numb. Now, think about it. Inescapable attack or inescapable threat is what prompts the freeze response. So if I'm in a burning building, if something's about to collapse onto me, if someone has me pinned against a wall, when I'm in a car crash, I'm going to dissociate and numb out, which means I'm not going to feel the horror or the pain that's happening to me. Instead, I'm going to become unconscious or dissociative. And then once the threat is gone, I come back into my body. So it's this little moment where time pauses, my recollection pauses, my ability to perceive where I am pauses, and it saves me from having to experience pain and visual horror. Now, what's interesting about that is a lot of us are going to therapy, especially a lot of us with PTSD from traumatic episodes like this. We're in therapy trying to figure out what happened. We're trying to uncover the memories, the sensations, the images, the sounds, some kind of, let's say, proof of the experience so we can get a sense of either validation or just understanding because the mystery is too strange for us or too uncomfortable. One thing to understand about freeze is it's designed to keep you from remembering. Now, somatic techniques and somatic experiencing, which I'm trained in, is one way the body actually can show you afterwards what really happened during an event. And it can even show you via posture. So if I'm working with someone who was in a car accident and doesn't remember it because they numbed out and dissociated when they went into freeze or collapse, the body, when we're talking about it, starts to show us what happened. So cognitively, we might not remember anything, but as the individual is telling me, they might be like, and the car was coming from over here, and their hands are showing me that their body wanted to do this, which is actually a fight response. Imagine if someone's walking up to you and they're getting in your space, you'd push them away. That's a version of fight. The body couldn't do this because it was in a car and the car was colliding with them. So it froze instead. But we see that the body wanted to have this happen. So we start to renegotiate the boundary violations that happened when we were collapsed, frozen, unconscious, dissociated, or numb. More on that another time. What I want to do is show you three videos right now from the animal kingdom that explains and shows how, why we go into freeze, and then how it works in our favor. So let's take a look. So in this video, you will see a gazelle and you will see a cheetah. The cheetah is hunting the gazelle. Now, what's interesting, and I'm going to forward this a bit, the cheetah ends up getting the gazelle, and you'll notice that the gazelle appears lifeless. It's laying there, you can barely notice any breath. This is the gazelle in collapse, and here comes a hyena. So the hyena is coming because it wants part of the meal that the cheetah caught, and that makes the cheetah very upset. So as you can see, the cheetah is kind of protecting this gazelle. It's protecting what it caught. And as the hyena comes up, it distracts the cheetah from the gazelle right there. And the hyena even starts to attempt to bite into the gazelle and then goes away to the cheetah. Now look at this moment right here. When the hyena is not looking, the gazelle hops up and runs away. I'm going to show you that again. So again, notice how the hyena is distracted. And when it looks away right here, the gazelle's body jumps and it runs. Now, what's really important about that moment is it shows you the purpose of collapse. In the animal kingdom, when there's a predator that is coming after you and your body is lifeless as if you're dead, that predator's adrenaline and their activation starts to come down immediately, which kind of turns off their hunting instinct. So they go more into a rest phase and they might look around, they might lose interest in the hunt in general, and they might get distracted, like we're seeing the hyena and the cheetah here getting distracted. That allows the gazelle's body to use neuroception, which means it's feeling with its nervous system, even though it's kind of in an unconscious state, and it senses nothing's looking at me. There's enough space for me to get away. And suddenly the activation comes into the gazelle. The gazelle jumps into the air and runs for its survival. So it mobilizes into the flight response that it was already in when it was being chased and then interrupted when it was caught and going into collapse. So wherever there is freeze or collapse, right under it is always a fight or flight response. There's always an expression of a boundary that wants to happen that didn't get to happen because of the circumstances. Let me show you the next video. This video is one I use a lot as a teaching tool. It was used for me when I was learning about freeze and somatic experiencing. And it's an incredible example of what I was just saying, what wants to happen but couldn't because of the anesthetic of freeze. Now, in this case, there's an actual anesthetic. This bear is being shot with a tranquilizer because the bear is being studied. So we want to understand that this is a chemically induced collapse response, which is important for anyone watching who has had medical trauma or upcoming medical surgeries. When you're under anesthesia, you're in a chemically induced collapse, meaning you can't feel, you're unconscious, and your body's unable to fight back. And what's fascinating about medical treatment is we need a boundary violation to occur for successful treatment. If I have something wrong with one of my organs, a doctor has to go into my body and permeate my skin shield in order to get to the organ and fix the problem. So even though my cognitive self is electing for the surgery and there's nothing abusive about that, my body's still experiencing a boundary violation that is unable to fight back against. This bear is going to teach us a lot about what that looks like when we come out of it and our animal instincts are still intact. So as you can see here, the bear is running away from the helicopter. This man is going to shoot the bear with the tranquilizer. So the bear's in an active flight response right now. Its body is saying, I can't fight the helicopter, I'm going to run from it. And then it's in collapse, chemically induced collapse. So right here, they're touching the bear's paws, the bear's claws, the area the bear would fight them off with. And now you see them touching the bear's mouth and teeth. Now I'm going to pause here because what you're about to see looks disturbing, but it's actually really empowering. They're touching the bear's paws, claws, mouth, jaw, and teeth. These are the fight areas. A wild polar bear would not let you do that if they were conscious, right? They had their agency. They'd bite you, they'd claw you, they'd roar at you, they'd probably kill you. So now, as the bear awakens out of the chemically induced collapse, it's getting in contact with all those boundaries that wanted to happen but couldn't. So when we see the shaking happen, look at the mouth. The mouth is shaking as if it's yelling. The paws are shaking as if they're clawing. The body, if it was standing up, would be fighting off these people. And right here, if you look at the belly, you will notice a big breath come in right there. That's the bear entering parasympathetic state, meaning the bear was able to discharge the stored up fight flight response that happened under the collapse state. And by discharging it, enter back into a state of rest. I'm going to show this to you in slow motion. Now imagine this bear is standing up. Look at that. That would be a bear that's yelling, that's roaring, that's biting, that's clawing. Its body is getting in touch with the boundary expression it wasn't able to have under the anesthetic. And now look at that belly again and wait for that big ballooning to happen. Right there. There it is. See that? That big, deep breath that the bear took, that's how we know the body has now realized I survived. I fought back, I survived. And that's what it looks like to not get traumatized. Think about all the times in your life you wanted to yell, you wanted to scream, you wanted to say no, you wanted to walk away, you wanted to push someone out of your way, and you didn't. Sometimes for good reasons, because we don't want to be violent. Other times because we're repressing the fight or flight because it's dangerous to show your boundaries and your needs and how you really feel. The amount of times we do that in our lifetime and never end up discharging afterwards is what calls us to walk around with this posture of rigidity, still holding in the boundaries that don't get to come out. When you hear someone talk about being traumatized and releasing trauma, we're talking about getting in touch with that posture that's still holding something and teaching it how to open and release and realize, oh, right now you're safe. Right now there's no threat. But that can only happen when you honor the boundary that wants to come out, what's stuck in you, the shout that's been swallowed, the punch that's been pulled back, the yell that is in your shoulders and your ears and your throat and in your stomach when your stomach's clenched. All that energy that wants to come out has imploded, and that's the cause of our stress. I'm going to show you one more video. This next video involves an impala and a cheetah, and it's an incredible example again of collapse and what happens when we move through collapse. So remember what I said, when you're in freeze or collapse response, right under that is fight or flight. Fight or flight wanted to happen, and for good reasons it got repressed for your survival, as we'll see with this impala. So notice how the cheetah is holding the impala's face in its jaws. First of all, let me just say, whenever I think I'm having a bad day, I remember the privilege of being human, that I don't have to deal with that every day. So remember that one. Let's go back. So when you're looking at this cheetah, the cheetah's on top of the impala, it's biting its neck. The impala is in complete collapse. Now, I'm going to rewind this because notice how the cheetah keeps looking back. There's something distracting it, whether it's a person, a vehicle, another animal, probably human beings. Something's distracting that cheetah, and the cheetah runs away. Now, look at the impala's belly. Notice how you'll start to see some breath come in right there. This is the nervous system and the body waking up and saying, okay, I can show that I'm still alive. The threat is gone. The predator is gone. I don't have to pretend to be dead anymore. And then you'll see the discharge happen. You'll see all that stored energy that was hiding under the collapse start to liberate itself right there. It's moving through the neck. It's moving through the limbs. The activation is coursing through this animal's body to propel it into the flight response that it wanted to go into in the first place. And watch for that. Now, if you were seeing an animal or a person go through that, you would feel bad for them. And that's what happens with us. I'm going to pause this. What happens for us as humans is a big sensation comes through and we might start shaking, we might start crying, we might start feeling like a big emotional movement and we think something bad's going to happen, so we shut it down. But it's actually how our body renegotiates the boundary violation and eventually expresses what was repressed with the freeze and the collapse response. So you can see all this energy moving through this impala's body. It's quite profound. The energy is reorganizing itself. It's saying, oh, are we safe? You see it starting to look around. And when it realizes it's safe, it kicks its back feet and it runs and goes into flight response. So that's what's so incredible about learning from animals. Actually, let me pause this, Fredo. It's going to stop the. So this is what's so incredible about these three pieces of footage is you get to see in the animal kingdom, you get to see the origins of our freeze and our collapse response, why we go into them. Where we get it twisted as humans is we're in experiences where there are no actual threats, like the pile of laundry overwhelms me, freeze. Someone says something I disagree with, freeze. I have too many emails I opened up, freeze. So somatic work really teaches us over time how to tell the difference between threat and overwhelm. When you're able to tell the difference between the two, in my opinion, you're no longer traumatized. A traumatized body is one that's stuck in the rigidity of protecting itself even when it doesn't need to. When you hear the term updating the body, that's just a fancy way of saying, I'm okay. There's nothing to brace against. What happened isn't happening now. What I'm fearing about in the future isn't happening now. It's very much a radical somatic experiencing of where you presently are. And that might be a stressful place, but it's often not an actual life threat. So see where you go from this video. I hope it was helpful, and feel free to write me at info@holisticlifenavigation.com, and I'm happy to react to any other videos and give you more of a somatic knowledge behind what it is we're seeing, so we can learn more about these bodies that we inhabit. Okay, see you next time. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.